Sean Pendergast and I had Nick Caserio in studio right at the end of the minicamp a couple of weeks ago. And as many of you have noted, it's probably the loosest we've seen Nick Caserio, at least in one of our interviews. He's come a long way in the last 3 years. Here's the very beginning of the interview.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. It's good to be here on National Donut Day.
Yeah, dude.
Look at this. If you're watching on the stream, look at that. He didn't just say, like, give me 12 glazed or anything. No. You put some time and effort into
variety. You got to have a variety.
That's the 5 Ps. 5 Ps, proper planning prevents poor performance. You can add a 6th one in there and make it piss poor, but that's frowned upon. So Caserio and how loose he is, and obviously his working relationship with DeMeco Ryans has been really good. And I think some people were skeptical that these two would get along because of some perceived power battle or something like that. I really continue to think now, as I did before they hired DeMeco, that both these two guys have an extreme ability to ignore a lot of BS and a lot of the personally motivated BS or a lot of preconceptions about the way a coach or a GM is supposed to act, and they just want to be on the same page and get the right kind of guys for the football team. And so far, I think they're starting to make a lot of progress. Nick talked about quite a few players. We had him on for an hour. The ones that caught my ear the most, I'm going to play for you. The first one was with Azeez Al-Shaair, linebacker who comes over from Tennessee, but had spent the first 4 years of his career with DeMeco Ryans as his linebackers coach and defensive coordinator. Here's Nick Caserio with a story about Azeez Al-Shaair.
So I was going to work out, do my workout, and Aziz was in there, and he has this ritual or habit where he puts on a weighted vest and he walks in the afternoon just to continue to work. And he was out there, he was on a phone, he's making a call or doing something, and he was doing his walk, and there was literally nobody around. So I think there's things behind the scenes that people don't see. And he's actually taken other players. I think he's taken C. Harris along the way, and they've done similar things. And really, that's an opportunity for those players to connect away from the field, away from the meeting room, and just spend time amongst each other. And you can't put a price tag on that because in the end, it's about the players and the relationships that they establish. Yeah. But
I feel it's a little bit of an alpha move too, that you wear a vest, but he's wearing a weighted vest, Nick. And yeah, guys talking. How much you vest today?
Nice down vest.
I had a 25-pound vest for my afternoon stroll.
I was going to say I have the exact.
His serves a purpose. Mine is more of a fashion statement, I guess.
You know about? I was so glad that I got a laugh out of Caserio from that, because for like a split second I was nervous that I had offended him somehow. I think with Azeez Al-Shaair, sometimes you can overstate bringing in guys who can be coaches on the field or coaches as veteran players. And I think the reason for that is people sometimes have it stuck in their heads that veteran leadership comes in the form of pep talks and kicking guys in the butt. When really, like when I've seen it work most effectively, and the guys that when I was a young player were really good leaders for me, you first, A, emulate their routines, like walking with a weighted vest, and B, what kind of nuts and bolts about the position can that guy teach you? And I think that if you talk to any of those linebackers, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, about their time with DeMeco Ryans, it's a lot of, hey, he gave me the answers to the test. You know, he taught me exactly what to look for tendencies, keys, tells, all of these things, and how to break down film in a way that's sometimes hard to teach just with an assistant coach who also has 5 to 10 to 12 other guys in the meeting room that he's got to work with. So with DeMeco, who, this is the battle for all head coaches, is how do you go from being a linebackers coach and a defensive coordinator into being the head coach, where you're not going to be able to spend every day in the room with Christian Harris? I think that this is a big part of it. And one of the big issues the Texans had at linebacker last year was biting on play action. The Texans as a defense were horrendous against play action. That was one of the big weaknesses. And some of that was on the linebackers, some was on the safeties. Sometimes the safeties didn't play as well as they should have or could have because they were wondering if they had to go bail out a linebacker. So I think Azeez, aside from his play on the field, and he is an old school lunch pail, come up and cold cock type of linebacker. I love watching Azeez play. I think that's where he can be not a replacement for Billy Davis, the new linebackers coach, or DeMeco Ryan, but can augment a lot of what D'Amico would want to teach Christian Harris and whoever ends up playing the Sam linebacker. And speaking of Billy Davis, the new linebackers coach, that leads us into another guy that we're all going to be watching keenly for the next few years, hopefully for another decade. But Billy Davis, who did not coach Cade Stover at Ohio State, but would have seen him when he was a linebackers coach at Ohio State and would have been recruiting linebackers because Cade Stover started off as a linebacker, moved to tight end these last 2 years. So this is Nick Caserio telling a story about Billy Davis's recommendation of Cade Stover.
He landed in Indianapolis in the lobby at a JW Marriott. Hey, Billy, great to meet you. Great to have you here. So we had some small talk. So he said, hey, look, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but like there's one player that, we need to get in this football team or you should get in the football team, be Cade Stover. He recruited Cade. I said, Coach, don't worry about it. Like, we're on it. So this was a player that we knew that we
exactly.
So it really kind of confirmed what we were thinking.
That's cool.
And then every step along the way, was confirmation about Cade.
And I know a lot of you are excited about Cade Stover. I did like a 15-minute video on Cade Stover. Very well received. Critical acclaim. And I'm not comparing Cade Stover to Will Anderson as a prospect. Obviously, they're much different. But on the character, football character, work ethic side of things, Caserio is saying almost exactly the same things that he said about Will Anderson. He's saying those about Cade Stover, and it's just that the word of mouth from everybody you talk to at either Alabama or Ohio State, they just gush about this guy. And as we know, C.J. Stroud himself gushed about Cade Stover to Nick Caserio and the staff. So a lot to feel good about Cade Stover. He is a project in that he's only been playing tight end for 2 years. He didn't have the benefit of like George Kittle going 4 years to a tight end factory like Iowa. And but he has a lot of those elements of a guy who can develop into a good blocker. He's already got very soft hands and is a much better route runner than you would expect for a guy who's only played the position for 2 years. I tried real hard to get Nick to make the George Kittle comparison. He would not go there out of respect to, I think, both people. Unfair to George Kittle and obviously unfair to a fourth-round draft pick to start talking about him as one of the best guys from the past decade. Speaking of Will Anderson, I did enjoy talking to Nick about Will Anderson and him agreeing with me that Will was very raw as a rookie, and he's got a lot of work to do, but he's really headed in the right direction. Speaking of Will Anderson, I know some of you have seen the video I just did on Will Anderson and where he needs to go and how he can develop, but that he was also very raw as a rookie in terms of being an NFL edge pass rusher, which is really exciting because he played pretty damn well. Here's Nick Caserio talking about just what Will was last year and where he is right now.
Pass rush is an art, and it's about technique.
Well, yeah, and you can see, because Will played like in a lot of like 4-eye and 5 techniques.
He looked like a frog in a stance sometimes.
In college, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, because that's what they had to read and react and everything. Mostly I just wanted to hear Nick say that Will had looked like a frog in his stance again, which is not bad. It was just more of a read and react type stance, more so than a pin your ears back, wide 9 alignment, get deep in the backfield as often and early as you can, which, by the way, that was one thing that Will really excelled at. He's getting across the line of scrimmage. Those first 2 steps were very, very good, including his reaction time from the snap of the ball. That's something to build on, and I did a video on this. You can watch it. Will talked a lot about just exactly how he's refining his technique this year. I'm very excited about Will. I think he might look like a completely different player this year, and he looked good last year. It's not an insult at all. It's just I think he's on warp speed to develop into a veteran NFL edge rusher. One of the rookies that we're all going to be talking about a lot for that cornerback position opposite of Derek Stingley, of course, is Kamari Lassiter. Here's Nick on Kamari Lassiter and also whether he's going to play inside or outside.
He's worked both on the inside of the part of the formation. He's played in the perimeter. I think he's very confident in a quiet way, is not afraid, and playing corner is about not being afraid because you're going to be challenged on, let's say there's 5 or 6 opportunities where the ball is going to be going right at you, and you're either going to make the play or not the play, and then you have the ability to turn the page. But what we've seen on the field in the spring so far is a lot what we saw on the Georgia tape, just the way he plays, just his mindset, his playing style, his competitiveness, his overall awareness and instinctiveness. To be able to kind of move inside and outside the formation, that's not easy for players to do, let alone a rookie.
I'm gonna use a phrase that is sometimes received as an insult, and I don't mean it that way at all, but the way that Nick was describing Kamari Lassiter, it sounds like a classic cover 2 corner. And the reason people sometimes think that's an insult is because, yeah, being able to lock down a guy one-on-one in man all over the field, the way that Derek Stingley is able to, that is the rarest and most highly sought-after creature. But to be a guy who can excel in zone coverage and also play inside and outside and also be willing to come up and tackle. If you think back, honestly, don't cringe when I say this, but to Lovie Smith's defenses of the Chicago Bears, there are some common elements and themes, and they had some really good cornerbacks on that team that they had drafted in the second round and later. Charles Tillman, for instance. But look, Tillman excelled at getting the ball out, was smart as hell, all those things that frankly, there are a lot of really good man cover guys who aren't good at that stuff. And this is a defense that is built on the defensive line. And that's something that DeMeco Ryans does not shy away from. He talks about the guys up front being the engine. When you have a defense like that, you're not going to probably ever see DeMeco have a huge high blitz rate on this team. They expect the 4 defensive linemen up front, every now and then a 5th one, to provide the pass rush, so you don't have to blitz to do it. And because of that, if you got really smart, tough, and physical, sorry to use that phrase, guys who can come up and hit people in the mouth in the kill zone, not the soft spot, the kill zone of the defense, that's what they're looking for. And when you want to have a guy to track Amari Cooper across the field or whatever, you've got Derek Stingley to do that. And Derek Stingley's been very willing and able to tackle too. So I like Kamari Lassiter from what I've seen from him so far. I thought he was really good in the minicamp, and there's a lot to get excited about there. He's faster than his 40 time would have suggested, but it's not like he's got otherworldly speed to where you should expect a guy like him to play like Derek Stingley. But in this defense, he could be exactly what the Texans need. So I'm eagerly anticipating him to put together a competitive training camp. A guy who was a first-round pick, Kenyon Green, is somebody that I know we are all crossing our fingers for and hoping for the best. I know some of you are more pessimistic. Some of you are more optimistic. I think I'm right there smack dab in realism, and I think Kenyon Green is just part of a competition for that left guard spot right now. His physique changed dramatically. You know, he'd always been a guy that looked a little bit like an overgrown adolescent, more so than a full-grown man. He came back this spring. He looks like a full-grown man. Caserio talked about how he changed up his workout routine after he got completely healthy and was able to start working out like an NFL player for the first time because he's just had such a litany of injuries since he's been up here.
The one thing that we liked about him as a player was his tackling and his physical play, which you can't see that in the spring. So, definitely encouraged by his progress for sure.
Went up to Oregon, worked out with Ndamukong Suh, learned how to kick Matt Schaub in the nuts, I suppose. But Ndamukong Suh is a badass when it comes to his workouts. He is an animal. And I do like that Kenyon Green was working out up at whatever Ndamukong Suh's place is. And I don't know how much Ndamukong Suh is there. But just even to have the input and the guidance of an elite defensive tackle like that, I think it'd pay a lot of dividends for Kenyon Green. He's a guy that was a big, strong mauler in college, and as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to have to continue to learn that, yes, there's a place for just being a big brute in the NFL, but ultimately you got to win with your feet. And he was showing progress in his rookie year before the injuries just caught up to him, and he never really had a chance to get it together after that. So I'm optimistic that he's going to look like an improved version of what we saw in some of his better games his rookie year. I thought in that Bears game his rookie year, he looked like he had some real potential, and it's just the injuries just all started adding up. So I'm not definitely not pessimistic about Kenyon Green. I'm in wait and see mode, and so far so good because he looks like he's put in the time and paid attention to what he's been eating. It looks like he's taking it very, very seriously. And the last guy, of course, Nico Collins. So what did Nick feel about Nico Collins that made it worth giving him that contract they did this offseason?
He went up to Oregon and worked with a group for about 4 to 5 weeks. So it was just kind of a different stimulus, kind of a different training. I think Ndamukong Suh works with a number of players up in Oregon.
That's where he's from, yeah.
Yeah, so he went up there for a few weeks. And, I mean, sometimes players, honestly, they just need a change of scenery.
Yeah.
Just something different, and it worked for him, and he came back. He's in a good headspace, so frame of mind's important. So credit to him, credit the work that he's put in. So, I mean, again, the true test will come in training camp. Where he improved really the most, going back to last season, was what he did with the ball in his hands. So the run after catch component, like we talk about that a lot offensively, and it's coached. There's a certain technique, Slow and his staff. I mean, we're very purposeful about how we teach that. But here's a big, strong guy, 6'4", 215, 220 pounds. Like, you're big and physical, play big and physical. So he started to play to his size. He's always had the ability to track the ball well. He's always had good hands, and he probably has unique route running skill for somebody his size. So, and the big thing with Nico, and he'll tell you this, and we've talked about it, he was available. He was able to stay on the field.
Run after catch, check. Had the most broken tackles after a reception in the entire league last year. Check. And staying healthy. That's the big question mark. I think the really important thing, if I were Nick Caserio in wondering or worrying about Nico Collins' availability, is that he did change up his routine. He did take measures to stay healthier during the season. So it wasn't just random chance that all of a sudden he had a completely healthy season. And then also in terms of the run after the catch, like CJ is obviously tied to that. Everything that Nick's talking about how they coach the run after the catch, a lot of it starts with the quarterback placing that ball just in front of you, at your face mask level, so you can turn and go and set things up like that. Like Nico just didn't have that many opportunities in the two previous offenses. So those were the players that we touched on with Nick's interview that intrigued me the most and got me the most excited. I don't know what Nico Collins' yardage is going to be like this year because they're going to be spreading the ball out amongst multiple options. I do think that like his yards per catch and his run after the catch is probably going to be greater than it was last year. And it was pretty damn good last year just because there's going to be more moments where there's no safety over the top of him and he can take off to the races with the addition of Stephon Diggs and having Tank Dell out there when he's healthy. And not to mention, it will be nice, given that injuries are a thing, that at times one of those three guys is going to be injured and you'll still have two really good receivers out there. I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans the first 5 years of their existence. I played in the NFL for 10 years. If you like the channel or the content, please like, share, subscribe. Just subscribe. You don't have to even do those other two things. Just subscribe.